I am back, feeling better, feeling refreshed, and whilst I was away, I had a very stupid idea to reset my account. Nah, not really. I don't think it's a secret, but most of WoW consists of players who have been playing for a very long time. Now, whilst I'm certainly not a veteran by any means, I'm also not particularly new to the game. I do know my way around the game to a certain extent, so I decided to create a brand new account and explore what the game is like as a fresh player, and what resources the game offers to new players to help them get settled in the world of Azeroth. Loading things up for the first time, we are automatically shoved onto the Terralian realm, which is marked as being a new player realm, and according to Google, that simply means that it is a low pop realm. Now on to character creation. I don't know about you, but when I created my first character, I went with a human warrior. How original. And thanks to epicgamertaggenerator.com, my new character shall be called Liquid Brilliance 44, or in this case, Liquid Brilly. Just quickly, I would like to say that I am trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so any help is appreciated. It costs you nothing and it means the world to me. Upon loading, we are actually not given the choice to spawn in at the regular starting zones, but are forced into Exile's Reach. At least that's what I think it's called. Okay, that's something that I didn't expect. I think the only fair thing to do is to disable everything. Once loaded in, we start to go through the absolute basics of the game. Generating rage, pressing 1 to use slam, and picking up and turning in quests. It's also worth noting that I'm going to play the game as closely to how someone who is new would play, which basically means clicking on anything that glows and following all the steps that the game wants me to take. Overall, I would say that this small introduction to combat on the boat is exactly what the new players need. After a small cutscene, we are then dumped on the shore because our boat has crashed, and we are then introduced to other important mechanics such as quest highlights on the minimap, looting corpses, and dragging new abilities to your action bar. We even learn how to chain some abilities together, like using charge to close the gap between you and your enemies, and then spending the rage that you just generated to slam the target. I would say that this tutorial has been pretty useful so far. Moving into the island, we now move on to the more intense quests, like this one where we have to fight a big boar guy, and the game teaches us about dodging swirlies. And I had no idea that there was a tutorial for this, considering every one of my Mythic Plus groups likes to stand directly in the center of any swirlies they see. Now we get to take on a couple of fun quests, where we get hoisted into the air via a grappling hook thingy and enlarging a boar in order to trample over the undead. Now I've seen a couple of people saying that this quest doesn't need to be in the tutorial, as it gives the wrong impression about what WoW is about. But I personally disagree, as having the weirder quests in the tutorial gives the players an idea of all the different kinds of quests that they will encounter. But let me know in the comments what you think. Is this the kind of thing that we should be showing new players? Afterwards, we are kind of left to just progress with a few quests, with the only new tutorial thing for a while would be learning how to equip gear, which I suppose kind of is a mandatory thing for an MMO. I also like that the tutorial has a small story to go with it. Ogres trying to resurrect the dead dragon and gain all the power and make everyone bow before them. You know, pretty typical stuff for a fantasy game. After putting on an ogre disguise and infiltrating their camp, destroying their catapults, slaying their leaders, and freeing our captured allies, we are then introduced to one more thing, which would be the Dungeon Finder, an absolute staple of modern WoW. Now, I know that there are a lot of controversial things that can be said about the Dungeon Finder feature, but like it or not, it is an important part of World of Warcraft. And I think this small tutorial dungeon does do a very good job of showing players how it works, with you being the DPS and your two other NPC allies being the tank and the healer. And it's not just load in, kill a boss, and then leave. It is like an actual instance, with multiple bosses and an actual route that you have to take. And it is pretty plain and simple as far as it goes, with there really only being a couple of simple swirly mechanics. And it does close out the small tutorial storyline with you defeating the ogre leader, who then sacrifices himself at the last second to resurrect the dragon, who you then have to take down as well. Now, to experienced WoW players, you'll probably look at this and think it's pathetic, but I personally had a bit of fun seeing what the tutorial offers, and I think that it does do a very good job. There are, however, maybe a couple of things that I wish the tutorial explained better. Like, just for example, it doesn't mention that the action bars are actually customizable, and I didn't want to change it since the game never actually told me that I could, but at the end of the tutorial scene, my action bars looked like this. And then the tutorial comes to a close by you being rescued by your allies and flown back to Stormwind. Upon loading into Stormwind, the first thing I see is of course an advertisement for the purchase of the full game, because after playing the tutorial for 45 minutes, the first thing on my mind is obviously to purchase the full game for 90 GBP. I imagine that for most new players, this is where you would start to get overwhelmed, since you're actually being thrown into the world for the first time. But luckily, the game does actually take you on a couple of quests to explore Stormwind, which is actually really good since it's vital that any player gets familiar with their capital city. First stop was learning how to talk to the Stormwind guards in order to ask for directions, which is actually really awesome. Next, we take a ride to the stable master, where surprisingly we were actually given a free mount, which is really sick. And lastly, we were taught about our class specializations, which yet another essential part of the game. Now, after our small tour around, I actually thought that we would just be left to explore and complete whatever quest we would like, but no. We were actually sent to the Dragon Isles, which is kind of surprising because I thought Blizzard would gatekeep any expansion until we would eventually buy their game, and it wouldn't be until we were actually on the Dragon Isles and doing the quests that I would realise why we get access to Dragonflight with a Starter Edition account, and that is because of dragon riding, another essential part of WoW that only has a tutorial within Dragonflight. So now that we had learned dragon riding, the only other thing to do was to quest through as many Dragonflight quests as we possibly could to see if we were actually given full access to the expansion on a Starter Edition account. And we did get pretty far, until we reached a point where we couldn't progress until we had gotten to level 28. And just in case you didn't know, the Starter Edition accounts only let you go up to level 20. Ah, there's the gatekeeping I was waiting for. But that's okay, considering I was basically level 20 already. So overall, I would say that we actually learned quite a lot, right from the basics of using abilities and turning in quests, to the slightly more advanced things like dodging mechanics and even dragon riding. So while I do think that everything we went through is very valuable to the newer player, I also think that there are some things that could be added to it. Firstly, I think that explaining dungeon roles in greater detail would be very valuable. I know that we do get that mock dungeon during the initial tutorial, but it doesn't explain just what the roles do, just only that they exist. The other thing I think should be explained better is the existence of Chromie. I actually didn't know about Chromie when the whole level where you want to thing first came around, but I think it's just really important mechanic for leveling and making sure that newer players do get the chance to explore and level where they want. And then of course, like I said earlier, explaining that action bars are customizable would be really great too. But I'm interested to know what you think. Do you think newer players get enough information in order to carry themselves in the world of Azeroth? Or do you think that they need a little more? Or better yet, are you a newer player yourself? If so, what do you think of how you were introduced to Azeroth? Let me know. I hope you all enjoyed exploring the new player experience with me. I am feeling much better now after being sick for like 2 weeks straight, and it feels great to be able to actually move again. Remember, I am really trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, so any help is appreciated. Also, if you want to watch my short Iron Man challenge series, I do have a playlist for it now, and I also made a full-length video for it, so it might be worth a watch if you're interested. Anyway, enough yapping. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all later.